Thank you for the kind introduction. May I ask the panelists to please join me on stage? I think it speaks volume of the quality of this event that so many seriously jet-lagged people are still there at 6 p.m. So Marta, congrats. You know, I would never pull that off. I would never pull that off. One of the so I'm Philippe. I'm a watcher of telecom regulation. I'm not a spectrum nerd, you know. And the time I spend on spectrum is on licensed spectrum, you know, where they sell it for billions. You know, that's usually where. Well, so it's always very refreshing to attend this DSA. And so last week I was catching up with my colleagues, and could you tell us in your region what's going on with the 6 gigahertz? Which way is it going? And one of my European colleagues told me, "Can't tell you, Philippe. It's geopolitics." I said, "Oh my God, you know." But and then, Alan, I was speaking to you at the break, and you told me that in the realm of spectrum sharing, you have a long tradition going back to the TV white space of not doing politics, but rooting all that in science. Can you just say a quick word on that before we get cracking with the rest? Because I think it's so no geopolitics, science is what you know?
No. My observation is sharing is hard, right? And we started with TV white space 2010, 2013, even before that. Charlie Lewis spoke about the project in Cape Town, which I was involved in. And on the other side were the TV broadcasters. The world was going to end. Then I worked with Chris on the most studied band in the world. We looked at, there were utilities, there's public safety, there's police, there's broadcast, there's radio astronomy, there's all sorts of satellite services. Everybody said it was going to be impossible. We spent years. FCC launched us in 2020. Here we are 6-7 years later, well, 5 years later, no reports of interference. Huge economic value created. And the way we got there was by actually doing the rigorous studies, measuring stuff, figuring out what actually works and doesn't work, and being honest about that. And it's played out, and that credibility is really important. My observation here, listening to Chris Wolford, Charles Cooper talking about possible sharing in the 6 gigahertz band and the 7 gigahertz band, it's the same approach is needed. I've been involved in lots of meetings where it has been political or it's been motivated by other reasons. But I think if we actually figure out what works and doesn't work, there are opportunities, and that's the work going forward for all of us. So that was my observation listening today to a lot of the conversations.
Thank you for setting the record right. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. I don't know, today AI was mentioned a couple of times, but less than on the average day. What do you think? You know, it was quite a nice break from a normal day at the office. I see people nodding. So I don't want to bring the topic back after this there, but Chris, could you make connect the dots on Wi-Fi and AI? You know, why does it matter? It seems to be two different topics. Why are they part of the same issue?
Hello.
Sharing.
Hello. All right. Now it's working. Well, you know, AI thrives on context. So if you don't have adequate context, you're not going to get the answer. And so at the end of the day, what we're looking at is how do we connect these billions of devices to provide context for AI? And it's all about the uplink. It's not going to be crazy amounts of data necessarily. So I'm not saying that you're going to be talking about doubling of data every 4 or 5 years. The trends might be different, but what you're going to see is a more intense focus on the uplink and reliability. So some of this AI traffic, you're talking about hundreds of kilobits per second. You're not talking about megabits or gigabits, but use cases that are using voice, but it requires extremely high reliability. And today's networks are simply not capable of it, even when a device has a cellular radio and a Wi-Fi radio. If you think about it, you look at IDC or ABI, you're talking about 4 billion and change devices shipped every year with Wi-Fi. You look at cellular, you take out the cars, you take out the phones, you're looking at maybe a few 100 million. So what are you going to do to connect all of those devices? How are you going to get that context? And so that's something that Broadcom's been very, very interested in, as our customers in the infrastructure side are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build data centers in countries all over the world. You've got to have some context that goes into that AI infrastructure, and we're going to find that happening over Wi-Fi, period. And so our networks need to be intelligent, versatile, and ready. And at the end of the day, consumers don't care if the broadband is from Zigbee, they don't care if it's from Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, they just want it to work. It has to be accessible. It's got to be cost effective. And right now, there is no other technology that's on the market right now that can displace a local area network that can displace Wi-Fi. And so that's why my company is so heavily focused on Wi-Fi 8, focused on the uplink, focused on providing sort of a reliable experience wherever you are.
Thank you, Chris. One of my pet topic on the policy side is data sharing. And listening to you, I suddenly realized that spectrum sharing, data sharing, there is some commonality there. You met all the panelists earlier today, except Josh Bagget from HP. Your colleague Detlef made a presentation on the sports side, stadiums. I thought perhaps Josh is HP Enterprise. Is the E still for enterprise? So that's for the word, okay?
That is.
You could say a word of Wi-Fi in industrial environment. Many our government across the world are chasing growth, competitiveness. And I heard you, Detlef, the sport business is a side of the GDP of my country, so it's not insignificant. But I'm still interested to know what's happening in factories and enterprises. So.
Yeah, so you've met everyone else. I'm Josh Bagget with HP Networking, based in Washington, D.C. on the wireless policy team. And you got to hear from Matt and Detlef earlier about sports with Wi-Fi. And honestly, that's it. Like, I cannot tell you how much that's taking off right now. I think one of the things that people miss out on 6 gigahertz is how quickly adoption is actually happening. Kevin's team over at the Wi-Fi Alliance put out some statistics on the number of certified devices for 6 gigahertz, and it's growing twice as fast as what 5 gigahertz did in the same timeline. So it's out there, and where it's backed by the governments, it's actually deploying, and people want it. When they see it, they see the benefits, they're coming to us and saying, hey, this is new, this is innovative. The technology is what's driving the want of this, right? And so we're seeing this kind of come on top of, at the enterprise level, they don't refresh their networks that often, right? And so you're thinking every 8 to 10 years for most enterprise networks that they're going to refresh. We're about 5 years in to 6 gigahertz in the US right now, so we're starting to hit that inflection point. And if you were watching Detlef's PowerPoint earlier, he had one chart that showed the traffic on 6 gigahertz ticking up for client devices going on to 6 gigahertz, right? And I think on the slide it shows around 30% is what it is. But you see on there, if you look at it again, and I think we're going to send all these slides out, and about November of last year, it's going about like this, and then it ticks up. Well, at that same time, that's when HPE, we made our inflection point on selling more 6 gigahertz routers at that point than all other routers combined. And so 2, 4, and 5. So we're right in the midst of this where it's taking off. Sports venues want it because it's out there, it's flashy. They have a lot of new cool stuff that they can do with it, but there's a lot of other places that are utilizing it as well, right? Dr. Ghosh was up here. Universities, campus deployments, whether it's standard power and going inside and outside. She's also got a CBRS pilot, and I do actually want to talk about that a little bit. I think the complementary nature between private 5G and Wi-Fi is pretty awesome. But you can also see this in healthcare and hospitals. Hospitals want 2 different kinds of networks. They want a Wi-Fi network for front of house, and so patients that may be waiting, they're just wanting to video call their family. but that data is not super sensitive. It's not critical to get through, but the patient imaging in the back of the hospital is. And so they want to divide those two, and you can do that with 6 gigahertz. And then for that imaging, you also need those bigger channels that we've been talking about. When you're coming over to some other things, manufacturing, Philippe, is one of those things where the real complementary nature of Wi-Fi and private 5G really come together. Both technologies have things that they do really, really well, and both of them have their deficiencies at certain times. But when you combine the two networks, that's really where you can see things shine. We've seen that come on as of late, so we just acquired Juniper Networks, I should say. Earlier this year, we acquired Juniper Networks, but all of those employees just came over. And so AI native networking is now the name of the game for us. Matt, we're going to come knock on your door, hopefully. That's what we're trying to do. And so when you're looking at what you're doing between Wi-Fi and private 5G, I was looking at a project that's in Indonesia called Pegatron. And it's a huge electronics manufacturing base that is putting in a private cellular network right now with a back-of-house Wi-Fi network. Now, this campus is huge, right? It's got something like 40 production lines, 6,000 workers, 12 buildings all interconnected with sky bridges going through everything, and a mixture of AI-enabled IoT and cameras that are helping the manufacturing lines do a number of different things. And it's actually a really cool way to see what they're going to do because of the speed of some of these machines. You have to use private cellular. They're too fast for Wi-Fi, right? And so what they're seeing is with the speed of some of these machines, when they're putting this private cellular AI-enabled camera onto it, they're getting about a 30% increase in efficiency for output going now. And I think that's a really cool thing. But with Wi-Fi, what they're doing is they're tracking. They're doing asset tracking. They're doing people movement tracking. They know where people are. And so when they're turning those lines over, right, 8 production lines running 24 hours a day, and you have to turn those over when you're going to a different IoT product, whatever it may be, they have found that they got a 50% increase in efficiency when turning those lines over due to AI native networking. So it's pretty incredible to see that nature of both private cellular where it can work and then Wi-Fi where it works just as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see the symbiosis between the two systems. And that's we'll come back to that. After enterprise, with your help, Alan, let's go back to consumers. And after a few years of me attending this conference, I feel more confident to tell you all the things I don't understand. So I'd like to abuse my position as a moderator here to ask you, please, Alan, I didn't grasp how Wi-Fi played a role in connecting your beautiful glasses to your handset. Does it go through the access point? Does it replace the Bluetooth? I hope I'm not the only one. If I'm the only one, you'll tell me that over drink tonight, but maybe there is another person. And you love to tell the story, so go ahead.
Oh, okay, very good. So just like Wi-Fi is the last hop in your home or in your office, it's now becoming the last hop on your body too for wearables. So this device is connected, whether it's Wi-Fi or your wide area network, but the link between here and here, we use both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And the reason we use the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi is to keep the latency down. We need a 10 millisecond latency requirement between the two, is to reduce battery consumption and to keep the thermals down and reduce the emissions so it's safe. And so it's a combination of multiple technologies, but it's really an unlicensed link using 6 gigahertz between the two, and then the wide area network afterwards. And people will talk about all sorts of other ways of connecting, but there are a lot of physical reasons, as I just mentioned, for that architecture, and we think that'll be a primary approach that people will use for a long time.
Matt, I'm a regulatory guy, not a technologist, and each time I hear about this 6 gigahertz band, in my community, it's very adversarial. You know, it's about these guys, you know, us, them, you know. Today, I heard one of the professors, can't remember which one, talking about coexistence. That's already better than opponents, but coexistence doesn't sound very warm. You see what I mean? You can coexist with your neighbor, doesn't mean you do barbecue on Saturday night. Well, actually, listening to Josh earlier, or just my own experience over, being on Wi-Fi in my garden office when I work from home, and then on a sunny day, taking cold outside and then losing the connection. I'd love to see a bit of symbiosis. Is it something that we could dream of? Certainly not a reality today. I know that's one of your pet topic, Matt. So how could we achieve that?
Yeah, when I look at the early days of Wi-Fi, I'll never forget it because we used to work with service providers and they wanted to use Wi-Fi in some of these venues, or they wanted to be able to roam into Wi-Fi and perhaps do offload. But the first thing I would hear from them is, well, how many Erlang do I get during busy hour? And in Wi-Fi, at least in the previous generations, we would say, well, it depends because it's unlicensed. And it depends on what the other uses are. And are you in a mall? And are there APs all over that are to each other, in fact, rogue use of the spectrum? And so we've worked very hard in the industry to move towards this deterministic behavior, this predictable and reliable behavior. And so when Wi-Fi made a leap in Wi-Fi 6 to enable OFDMA, you know what it was? It was the Wi-Fi community actually learning from the efficiencies and doing frequency division that came out of what community? The cellular community, right? And then
Thank you for acknowledging that.
And then you see the cellular community, and they want to put in private 5G. But how was cellular deployed in macro towers? It was deployed to be fair. So in other words, if you had one person, they'd get a pretty good experience. If there were 200 people, it would just subdivide it. It was fair. Now, there's things that have been done in 3GPP and other places to apply policy, but typically when you're talking about a guest access service, it's designed to be fair. Enterprise indoor networks are not fair, and they're not fair on purpose, right? We apply policy, we schedule the network access, the upper layer policy influences the lower layer scheduler to meet the requirements of the application that is mission critical to that venue. What's mission critical in a warehouse or in an auto manufacturer, what's mission critical in an elementary school, what's mission critical in a hospital is often different things. And so Wi-Fi has been able to apply policy in such a way, leveraging now some of the things that they learned from the cellular community, leveraging these next generations and what we're doing in Wi-Fi 7 to actually provide a reliable, predictable, low latency experience, the things that Alan's talking about. He's using Wi-Fi to get a low latency experience. It wasn't that long ago we said it was unpredictable. It wasn't that long ago we called Wi-Fi best effort, right? So now it can be predictable. Okay, so we have that. And you have these devices, they can connect to 5G, they can connect to Wi-Fi, not all devices, but a lot of devices, the smart devices that we talk about, right? Now, if Wi-Fi can provide a carrier class experience, now you can converge. And that's what I mean by convergence and service convergence. If cellular can trust Wi-Fi, right? Now think about this. How many billions of dollars are being invested in a distributed fashion indoors to deploy Wi-Fi networks? How many billions of dollars are being invested in cellular to cover countries? Why can't we combine these billions into a unified network experience? Now, I think we have to be realistic. When you hear some of the numbers and the fact of the matter is that people work, productivity happens, innovation happens, typically in hot spots, right? And I think that the cellular community will learn this a little bit because they're going to become hot spots to satellite. So it's another way to look at it. So that's why I'm saying let's leverage the investment, let's leverage the distributed investment, let's leverage the more centralized B2C type models, so that we can provide this ubiquitous experience. But we also have to acknowledge where traffic happens, that you get these huge gains economically for a country.
Now, those who watched the mobile industry over the last 30 years will remember the days where each mobile operator had its own tower. It's mine, not going to share it with yours. When each of them, even when they share the mast, would refuse to share the RAN, you know, and now, as you know, RAN sharing is the name of the game. So even mobile operators can change, but that's the good news.
Yeah, and it's a great example. Right?
Now, if a crude summary of your talk is that technology is ready now, mature on both sides. Now, if it doesn't happen, it means there's something wrong in terms of aligning the incentives, you know. So what would it take, you know, to open the eyes, or does it need regulators to step in? Does it need to have the Wi-Fi community to explain its case in a better way? I fail to understand what is the roadblock, you know.
I think it is not a technological block.
That we understood. So
it is a business block, right? And if I'm completely open and honest, I think it has to happen because it's not going to be economical to do it another way. So look, I've mentioned earlier, there's over 600 million Wi-Fi guest access networks across the planet. That represents an unbelievable amount of capacity, right? If you can roam into that, if you can use your identity into that, if you can offer services not only into the Wi-Fi network, but the enterprise can extend into the 5G network, what are you doing? You're creating new business models. The progressive operators that take advantage of the new capabilities and business models, I think they'll force this direction just because of the economics.
No, I have no legitimacy to speak on behalf of the mobile industry or an industry. Certainly, check your own country. Probably the trends of mobile revenue the ARPU is probably going down. So I don't know if I'm a mobile operator, and there is a community out there offering me to make my clients happy, because when they are in the office, in the supermarket, they are covered. They think I'm a great mobile operator because they don't really care who gets the signal. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Can the mobile operators afford to densify?
They will probably say that they cannot see the business case. You know, I don't know.
So
again, I shouldn't speak for them.
So
I'm
dense
not
already?
GSMA.
Can Wi-Fi be the densification strategy?
Well, I'm going to run into trouble soon. I hope this is not recorded, okay? We'll be among friends here. Anyway, just to say, I very much hope you guys make progress in cooperation. No, somebody wants to jump in on that before I ask Chris a difficult question? No? Later this week, I'll be in Baku. Anybody going to Baku? Nobody goes to Baku. Even Ilham is not going to Baku. Some people. And on the side, I don't know, I was asked to give a talk on VULA, which is the way, not that you should know about VULA, this is the way you share resource on a fiber to the home network. Anyway, so on fiber, Chris, you said something about, you know, your company and some of your competitors coming up with electronics to generate speeds which I cannot remember because they were so high on fiber to the home, and somehow this is a relation with Wi-Fi. Could you explain?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So right now we're dealing largely with a world of XGS GPON, which is basically 10 gigabits per second uplink and downlink. But that's not to a specific subscriber. That could be going to 4 homes, 5 homes, multiple businesses. So typically you look at service levels of somewhere around a gigabit per second, maybe 2-3 gigabits per second. Right now, we see the industry going to 50 gigabits uplink and downlink in the 2030 timeframe. And that's what you're going to see that's prevailing. And there are arguments in the industry as to whether to go to 100 gigabit per second after that, or there are some in China that are saying, whoa, 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 that's not enough. We need to go to 200 gigabits per second. And so we're seeing exponential growth. So fiber has an incredibly long runway. Any fiber you lay can go much, much faster based upon the interconnect. So all you're doing is changing the interconnects to enable faster speeds. And this is being driven by the need to connect all of these data centers. So as we have AI data centers and they're building out these enormous clusters, you're going to have faster networking. The same thing's already happened with Ethernet. We're seeing Ethernet that's capable of switching, hundreds of terabits per second. So you're going to see this fiber roadmap, and you're going to see all of this advancements in fiber. So as we have that, and if everybody's connecting their devices wirelessly, then how does a user, an enterprise or a residential user, derive the benefit of this increased fiber rollout? You're going to have wireless connectivity at the end. So, Broadcom recently launched our Wi-Fi 8 products, as I already mentioned earlier. And so now we're already working on what's next. And I can tell you that our operator customers in the United States want 640 megahertz channels. They're looking to get whole premises coverage of 5 to 10 gigabits per second. They're looking to have access points that are run in the middle of an apartment complex that can be segregated virtually and can cover 2, 3, 4 apartments economically. This is the direction that we're going. And so you're going to start to see this massive disparity because a lot of the world, including Europe, doesn't even have a 640 megahertz channel. So you're going to have the capabilities in the US and in Canada and in Korea. This is the direction the world is going based upon the requirements and sort of the overall evolution of various technologies. And so that's where we see Wi-Fi 9 going.
Marta is signaling that she'd like us to have a drink, So I should cut it short. But first of all, Dean would like to say something, so I certainly wouldn't want to deprive him from a question. While a mic is perhaps being brought to Dean, I'd like two things I'd like to ask. But Dean, you go first. Be short. I'll be short too. Then.
I agree with the comments we've heard today about latency, including for voice plus AI. I've been doing quite a lot of work on that. But I have serious doubts about this 5 gig, 10 gig, 100 gig to residential property. Most fiber companies are finding it hard to get take up beyond 20%, even on 1 gig. They're having to lean on regulators to do copper switch off to try and nudge people into it. No one's using 1 gig at the moment. So I'm just really curious in the residential space where you see active use, apart from people just ticking the box for the top end version, this sort of demand for 10 gig symmetric coming from. I buy the latency argument. The rest of it, I'm less convinced by.
Thank you, Dean, because I made that point last year, and Chris took it very badly. So thank you for. I would not have dared. I'm a guest here. So.
Well, I was getting sleepy, and now I'm waking up a little. So you've got to remember that it's a rate versus range. People aren't necessarily sitting right next to their access point, and as you move, the signal attenuates, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's absolutely absurd to be talking about upper mid-band spectrum for wireless broadband via an outdoor base station. I mean, honestly, it defies all logic. So when we talk about indoor, even if you get 1 or 2 rooms over, your signal's attenuated so that you're moving down to a point where that 10 gig connection might be 2 or 3 gigs. And what we're talking about too is we're talking about scheduling packets. So it is the case that as your average throughput increases, the 99th percentile latency decreases by an order of magnitude. And that has to do with the ability to schedule incredibly sensitive, latency sensitive packets very, very quickly. So the two go hand in hand, Dean. So I would say this. Number one, we're seeing this massive increase in the number of devices. We're seeing the need to have coverage throughout the whole premises. That 10 gig coverage next to the router is going to probably be at the edge of network, somewhere around 1 to 2 gigs per second. And we're seeing these neutral host ideas where you have a single access point that's covering multiple residences. And then you end up then connecting it with a pod within the actual apartment building. So it's sort of advanced mesh networking. So what's driving all of this is cost. What's driving it is cost and latency. And what's going to actually drive the deployment of 100 gig is China. China's going to drive that because they've built up so much vertically, and so that 100 gig connection or that 200 gig connection is still only going to get you service levels in an individual apartment of maybe 500 or 400 megabits per second. I don't care if you have fiber to the room or you have fiber to the house or you have fiber to the building. At the end of the day, you're still talking about metering out that connection to multiple people in one location. So the fiber absolutely is going to roll out. That's happening. It's on our roadmap. We don't chase green shoots at Broadcom, so we're developing that right now. And at the end of the day, if you look at the US and Canada, I would say that the prevailing connection in the US is a gigabit per second. Canada's ahead. It's moving to 4 to 5 gigabits per second. If you look at Bell Canada, they're moving up there. We're seeing the adoption. What are people doing with it? Maybe they're just doing a speed test saying, wow, this is wonderful. But they're deploying it, people are buying it, and they're paying a surplus or a premium for it.
Don't come back. You'll sort that out tonight. Martha, please, too quick. We go quick, otherwise Martha won't be happy. I'd like, AFC was mentioned, of course, today, but I'd like a short status report. You know, you guys live in a country that there's seven AFCs? Perhaps there are regulators for a number of countries around the world who wonder, you know, is it working? So we can find a list, of course, on the net. What is the business model? I'd say your company, for example, Chris, is one of the AFCs. What is the business model? Is it something you do to make money, get rich? Or
Well, you know, Broadcom sees AFC as sort of approaching a zero margin business. So we developed the technology and then we've spread it. So we've worked with partners like Meta, like Cisco, and we've developed the Open AFC software project. So any of you in this room can go to GitHub, just Google Open AFC, go to GitHub, you can download AFC. It's been built for the US, Canada, there's capability for Brazil, there's capability for the UK. And what Broadcom's looking for is to make sure that any device we make can operate the way we've designed it to operate, at the power levels we've designed it to operate. So it gives us scale, you know, globally. But we're not seeing AFC as a differentiated sort of product that would have sustainable margins.
Yeah. Final question, and then Martha, we done. The other day, I ended up in a conference on quantum. You know, didn't understand much, to be honest, but I vaguely understood that quantum computing is a few years down the road, said certain people, much longer, said others. They had some comments about quantum communication as well, and everybody agreed that quantum sensing was really around the corner. That's as much as I grasp from. Dean agrees. I mean, we agree on everything today, Dean. I know Wi-Fi 9 is somewhere around the horizon. You know, are you guys, you know, working on sensing, on integrating quantum? Is it? I know we talked about 7 and 8 today, but a word on 9 to finish this panel and this conference.
Maybe we can toss around a couple of things among the panelists, but really quickly, I think that quantum cryptography will absolutely be something that's under serious consideration for Wi-Fi 9. I see trying to connect more rural areas and connecting the unconnected. It could be satellite, satellite-based Wi-Fi, NTN. I see that on the horizon. I see wider bandwidth on the horizon. So these are some of the things that I see for Wi-Fi 9. Quantum computing is wonderful, but that's probably 10 plus years out, and then by the time it gets deployed commercially, maybe another 5. So I think we're going to have walking around robots before we see people monetizing quantum computing. No.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, I think there's a fear.
So you mentioned Wi-Fi sensing earlier. Is there a relation between Wi-Fi sensing and the sensing that the 6G community is talking about?
I would say yes and no. I mean, if you look at sensing right now, I mean, one of the things that Chris didn't bring up on 640 megahertz channels is that if you have 640 megahertz channels, our ability to do location, our ability to do sensing across that wider channel actually increases quite significantly. The processing that we'll do against that, I think, will apply a lot of AI type capability, but I don't think it requires quantum in order to get there. I think the bigger concern and what we're all preparing for and what the WFA is initiated is this ability to make sure that we're ready for quantum when quantum happens in the security domain.
Yeah, absolutely, which is the holy grail. On this, please join me in thanking our panelists. And sorry to cut you short, it's all Marta's fault.